Welcome to Broadband Action, a podcast presented by the Community Broadband Action Network. I'm Curtis Dean, and I'm flying solo today. That's right, no co-host John Willow. Miss her dearly, but I'm at Fiber Connect in Nashville, Tennessee, the annual big blowout by the Fiber Broadband Association. The show actually concluded yesterday, so I'm recording this on my getaway day. Great event. Things started really on Sunday evening on July 28th with a big vendor reception. And that's really when the networking starts at this event. If you haven't been to Fiber Connect, I would encourage you to try to budget to do it because it is well worth it. The connections you make, the conversations you make are just really invaluable. And especially with my role at CBAN and my goal to grow the organization, that's really what I was focusing on. Monday and Tuesday were the 2 days of full sessions. We had sessions on a myriad of topics, and it was a great experience. A lot of people went to sessions. A lot of people just spent the time networking. I was on the latter of that, as I didn't spend a lot of time in sessions. Too busy just getting to know people and catching up with old friends, and there were a lot of them here. Now, there was a half a day of sessions on Wednesday. Most people got out of town right after that yesterday, and I myself stayed because my flight leaves on a Thursday afternoon, so that gave me a little time to take a little bit of a break and tour this place. Now, speaking of this place, we're at the Gaylord Opryland in Nashville. That's where the conference is. That is where the hotel rooms are, although not everybody stayed on property. And I got to tell you, this place is enormous. It's like a Mall of America of conference venues. Seriously, there's so much to see and do. And of course, we had 5,000 people from the conference here, but holy mackerel, did we have a lot of families. They're still here now, even on Thursday morning, the 1st of August, as I record this. A lot of families use this as a getaway because there's just an enormous, gigantic place. There's several atriums, there's rivers, there's waterfalls, and in fact, my first choice was to record poolside. They have both a giant indoor pool and a giant outdoor pool. So I'm going to go out to the outdoor pool. Thought it'd be nice to get outside a little bit and enjoy. I walked through that door to go to the outside pool. I was hit with this blast furnace. The glass is fogged up, having been in air conditioning for so long. 113 heat index here yesterday. So there's your caution when you come to Nashville in late July, early August. That's exactly what you might encounter. But I quickly pivoted and went and found my bearings and also figure out how to explore this place without literally having to get an Uber. When you check in, they have their check-in materials. You know, the key. Usually, you use the little thing that your key tucks in. Well, that little thing folds out to a map about yay big to get you navigated. And there's signposts, everywhere trying to keep you to go in the right place. But honestly, I got lost my first walk around when I got here, and I've been here before, so it did take a while to really get my bearings. Now, my second choice to record the podcast is there's a neat little bar area called The Falls, huge social gathering spot during conferences, and indeed, it was standing room only there Monday night, Sunday night, Monday night, and even Tuesday night. But when I went there yesterday thinking I would record this, the sound of the waterfall was overwhelming. You can hear the sound of fountains behind me, but the waterfall was just too much. The microphone was not able to really compensate for it, so it was drowning me out pretty bad. So I settled on a much quieter spot here in what they call Delta Island, which it literally is surrounded by a fake moat. But again, here we are. And so here we are to talk about the conference. And enough about me and my explorations. Let's talk about the conference itself. First of all, it was amazing and great to touch base with so many of our CBAN members this week. I probably ran into 20 or 30 members of CBAN. They're either vendor associate members, they're provider members, not a lot of community members here because these are mostly people who are actually in the field working. I talked to a lot of organizations and individuals about becoming CBAN members, and so I'm optimistic that after this venture to Nashville, we're going to see our membership finally top that 200 plus mark. So we'll stay tuned for that. We'll keep you updated on that in future podcasts and, of course, on our Broadband Bites newsletter. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Jim Baller with Keller and Heckman. Keller and Heckman is one of the top communications attorneys in the entire nation, based in Washington. Long record of working with community-based broadband providers, which is, of course, who we concentrate on here at CBAN. I've known Jim since 1999 when I was just cutting my teeth in telecommunications way back in my Spencer, Iowa days. And he was kind enough to take me to dinner. And we spent a great couple of hours waxing poetic about the good old days or bad old days, which way you want to look at it, the early days of municipal broadband. We were both actively involved at the time and knew that from those days. So it was kind of fun to share stories. Not only did Jim host me for an amazing dinner, but I really want to give them a huge thank you, as Keller and Heckman has become CBAN's first broadband backer sponsor. We'll talk more about what that means in a future podcast. We'll get Jim on the podcast. We'll talk about what Keller and Heckman does, why they decided to go above and beyond and support CBAN with our broadband backer sponsorship. We do have another one that's coming soon. We'll be announcing as well, another one of our associate members that's decided to take that next level of supporting what we do so we can continue to grow our capacity, grow our mission, grow our membership, and grow our impact. That's what we're really trying to do. Also, while I'm on Jim Baller, I really want to congratulate him. He was the winner of this year's Star Award from the Fiber Broadband Association. That Star Award recognizes a person, community, or a company that has gone above and beyond what is expected for the advancement of fiber to the home. And boy, has he. He fits that description to a T. So way to go, Jim. And again, thanks for spending some time with me. Now, the one session I did attend, which is interesting, I usually sit in a lot of sessions at these conferences, but the one I did take on my schedule, well, I had to. I was the moderator of a panel discussion called Public versus Private Middle Mile Fiber. So that was a panel discussion, and Jim Baller was on that panel, and 4 others. So I'm the moderator. My job was to keep the conversation moving along and to avoid getting stuck on 1 or 2 topics so that everybody on the panel had an opportunity to make the key points that they felt were important from their perspective. We have representatives from Zayo Fiber on there, Google Fiber, Accord, which is a middle mile fiber organization out of Indiana and Michigan. Of course, Jim Baller was on there, and Ribbon Communications also represented on the panel. If we get a chance to get the slideshow to share, we'll make sure we share that before you in a future Broadband Bites. I don't believe it was recorded on site, but the key theme from that session, that 50 minutes of discussion, not only of our panel, but the questions from the audience was, we still need more middle mile fiber assets in this country because we have so many providers that are looking for competitive options. They may be locked into a single source for their middle mile connection between their office, their data center, and a internet point of presence. They may not be locked into one, but they may not have good pricing, or they may need a competitive and redundant route to avoid that single point of failure, which is something that I talk to members almost all the time about. If you can have 2 middle mile connections, it's a bit of an insurance policy, so that if something goes wrong, a construction company goes through a fiber cable somewhere in the middle of a rural area, it's not going to knock your entire community, your entire customer base offline. So we really talked about the fact that more middle mile fiber is needed. The fact that we believe all the federal dollars that will be spent on middle mile has already come and has been awarded through the NTIA Middle Mile Grant Program. So we think that's on the way out. And so they're going to have to get creative in how we build these new middle mile assets. And so we talked a lot about public-private partnerships between private companies, public entities, and how they can make these connections work through resource sharing, through ownership sharing and joint capital investment, through joint operations, even down to, say, a county saying to a middle mile provider, if you'll come and you'll make that middle mile connection among all of our facilities, then we'll sign into an agreement that'll allow you to get compensated for your investment. So there's so many different ways you can cut that, that we think that, you know, making those connections between providers, governments, and internet exchanges is going to be a huge role going forward, because we're building broadband out in that last mile program that BEAD is going to hopefully take care of. But that last mile is limited, can be limited by the middle mile. And so we need to build that capacity out. So that was our theme of our discussion. It was well attended and we had a great time. All right. Always here at Fiber Connect, and really almost any large national event, there's some news that drops while you're here, right? And I'm not talking political news because there's plenty of that. We won't get into that. Talking broadband news that dropped. And there was a key development that came down the pike on July 29th, directly from NTIA Chief Alan Davidson, who was part of one of the sessions here. And Davidson basically told the audience here at Fiber Connect that NTIA is going to be putting out a proposed document that will allow the states to use alternative technologies for BEAD projects. So fiber has all along been seen as the preferred technology for BEAD expenditures. However, as time has gone on, more and more in the industry realize that there is probably or very likely not enough money in BEAD to serve every unserved resident and business in the United States with a direct fiber connection, especially getting into the very far rural areas where it's just extremely expensive. So now with this ruling, and we'll learn more about it when they actually pop out that document of guidance, they're going to allow things like unlicensed spectrum fixed wireless to be at the table. Right now, only licensed fixed wireless spectrum technologies are available. And even then, they're way down the list of things you can do. So it makes it hard, even the way the rules are, to even consider fixed wireless as a way to solve for these unserved areas. So this really matters a lot. And again, the proof will be in the pudding when the guidance comes out. But it really matters a lot because the cost to deploy broadband, especially in very rural areas, likely means not everybody's going to get fiber. We could spend all 42.5 or 40 billion, whatever it washes out to be, of BEAD through the states, and we're still going to have a lot of unmet need if all we do is use fiber. And I'm a fiber guy, I've been a fiber fan for a very long time, but I'm also a realist. And I also understand there's a lot of work going on with these next generation fixed wireless technologies that are utilizing both licensed spectrum and unlicensed spectrum. And in fact, using both in many cases to have reach farther, to reach better through better penetration through foliage, handles terrain better. I talked to one of those technology developers here at Fiber Connect, and whoa, Nelly, the stuff they can do is just amazing. In fact, one of our CBAN members, Open Broadband in North Carolina, they are a provider that has been utilizing this new fixed wireless next generation technology to reach customers, and they are seeing amazing results. And so that's the kind of thing that I believe is going to be needed to fill many of those gaps today. And by today, I mean the next few years. Now, we understand that fixed wireless right now is an inferior technology in many ways. Speed, total capacity, distance, still is challenged by people that live in river valleys or in the forests or mountains of America. But it can, in many cases, deliver great broadband capable speeds. And the technology is being constantly innovated. So I think we'll see a continued redevelopment of that next generation wireless because there's so much gain from it. And of course, where there's market opportunity, that there's going to be innovation. So I expect to see that. However, we understand it's not fiber. We understand that fiber that's going into the ground today will meet broadband bandwidth needs for 40 years or maybe longer. But if it means the difference between people not getting online now and getting online now, I'm an advocate of what works, and it does work in today's. And the economics are such that even with that 75% BEAD subsidy, we're not going to get fiber everywhere. It's going to take advanced fixed wireless. and other technologies that may be coming down the pike. Satellite plays a role in that too. Now, another big piece of news that dropped this week is the resurrection, potentially resurrection, of the Affordable Connectivity Program. It wasn't announced at Fiber Connect, but news that did drop this week. And the Benton Institute did a great job, as they always do. I'll put a link in the description below. As they summarized, the Senate Commerce Committee advanced Senator Peter Welch's, he's a Democrat from Vermont, amendment to fund the Affordable Connectivity Program with $7 billion as requested in the bicameral, bipartisan Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act. The amendment was attached to the Plan for Broadband Act legislation to streamline federal broadband programs and make it more accessible for underserved areas. So there's been a couple of different attempts, both in the Senate and the House, to resurrect ACP as standalone bills, not getting traction, not getting out of committee. So smart what they did here. They took another broadband act, which was to streamline things. They attached this to it. And as a result, they were able to get it out of Senate Commerce Committee. Now, it's work going on in the House, too, for the language, although I think it's almost the same, probably some tweaks. So the goal here is that they'll be able to advance those through, get them passed, get the bills matched up, and get it passed again, and then the president can sign it. So we'll be monitoring the progress of any ACP resurrection. $7 billion would get us about another year of funding if we go back to funding ACP at the levels it was before. There's a large push from a number of lawmakers to change the eligibility requirements for ACP, which would put millions of people on the other side of the eligibility line because they want to stretch the dollars further. So we'll just have to see how that all pans out. I think there's a chance that those rules might get tweaked. And instead of maybe eligibility being based on 200% of the poverty limit, it might be dropping down to 135% or something like that. So we'll keep monitoring that. And of course, we'll update you in our Broadband Bites newsletter. By the way, if you do not subscribe to Broadband Bites, our weekly e-newsletter, you should do that because you're missing out on stuff. And all you have to do is go to our website, broadbandaction.com. You're going to see this little window pop up. You're going to put your information in there, and you'll be subscribed automatically. And of course, shameless plug, we'd love you to be a CBAN member too. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Now, speaking of fiber, one of the other key takeaways for me here at Fiber Broadband Association is talking with some of the companies that operate and build and innovate and research fiber broadband access platforms, such as CBAN member Calix and Nokia, two of the ones of several that were here. They are all working on what's next, right? They know that the path forward to fiber broadband is going to require more capacity, more throughput, lower latency, all of these things that give fiber an advantage in the broadband marketplace. So we look at it today, all of them have what's called XGS-PON. XGS-PON in the field being deployed by most operators either as a retrofit to their previous GPON or as coming out of the gate doing it with XGS-PON. Because the two are compatible, in fact, they can overlay each other on a fiber network. It's not a forklift upgrade. It can be a simple plug-and-play upgrade. So XGS, the X in XGS stands for 10. But as was pointed out to me by a couple of the operators, 10 is really the max capacity. Really, the real-world capacity is like 8.5 gigabits per second up and down. Still darn good, right? But it's the reason why you'll see, for example, Google Fiber in their service platforms are advertising 8 gig as their top line speed, even though they are using XGS-PON technology. That's because they don't want to under-promise it or over-promise and under-deliver. So keep that in mind. So that's the current state of the art, right? But it is, but it isn't, because there are some fiber access platforms out there that are doing 25G PON. And 25G PON, as I learned, is truly 25 by 25. So it's not limited to some lower amount. And that goes in both directions too. So that is available for feed deployment in the field today. Some operators are starting to deploy it. Some have that option. if they happen to be on that platform's that company's platform. I won't name the company because we like them all and they're members. So we want to just give it generically. If they're on that company's platform, like several CBAN members are, they could go to 25 GPON and offer 25 gig services tomorrow if they wanted to. The demand's probably not there, but it might be with some larger businesses, and ability to choose serve those larger businesses with a standard passive optical network or PON technology versus some sort of more expensive proprietary technology. That's huge. So that's available today. And in fact, the platform provider that I was mentioning that has 25 GPON today told me that what's happening is some operators are using the 25 GPON to be able to offer true 10 by 10 because it's got the capacity, as opposed to the XGS PON, which is really kind of 8.5. So complicated math. But the key here is it's moving forward. I even saw a lab demo of 50 gig PON. It was working. They were testing it. Not ready for prime time, not ready for the field because they haven't miniaturized the optics and the electronics to the point yet, but it was right there in the rack and they were running it, and it was pretty dang cool. Others are kind of going over 25G. They're going straight to 40G, but everybody's headed toward 50G or maybe even 100 gig. And think about that for a second. This is the access platform. This isn't the backbone. This is not the middle mile. This is not long-term transport where 100 gig is used all the time. This is to your house. This is to your business. And what that tells me is really, really smart people, much smarter than me, know the direction that bandwidth is going. And so they are getting ready. They want to stay out ahead. Even though field deployment of these really higher end ones are years away, they want to stay ahead of the curve for good reason. They're in a very competitive marketplace. So fiber deployment, fiber access equipment is only going to keep getting better. There are only going to continue to be more entrants in the field. Really, 2 years ago, there were the big three. Now it's the big 4+5 or something like that, with smaller companies, very well-established names that are pivoting a bit in their product lineup to be able to offer PON, XGS PON and beyond. So they all realize that bandwidth growth is not slowing down any soon. They want to stay ahead of it. They want to be there to meet that consumer curve demand. Now, one other topic of discussion this week before I wrap things up was the future of the Universal Service Fund. As you may know, and we've written about in Broadband Bites here a couple of weeks ago, there was a lower court, circuit court ruling that basically said Universal Service Fund is unconstitutional because the FCC basically farmed out the administration of it to Universal Service Access Company, Administrative Company, USAC. USAC, let's just leave it at USAC. And that was an unconstitutional move. So it isn't going to affect, everybody knows right now it's not affecting the ability of the Universal Service Fund to do what they do and do it well. But everybody's watching it. And talking to a number of people, crystal ball, shine it up, what do you think? Nobody knows what's going to happen. It's really going to come down to the U.S. Supreme Court. And right now, whether they'll take the case is one question, and whether they'll rule either in favor of a very long-term precedent or whether they'll do what they've been willing to do of late, which is overrule previous precedents in support of what they see as restricting administrative overreach. So we do know that if the ruling is upheld, it is going to have an enormous setback, especially for rural providers, libraries, schools, any other entity that has accessed the USF to bring connectivity to millions of Americans. There are a lot of rural providers out there right now that are wringing their hands because they have used the USF to build out broadband to rural areas and keep up with technology curve that there's no way they could have done without having that additional support, because the market in rural areas is just so tight. So if USF goes away, it's going to be a huge challenge. So we'll keep monitoring that. We'll do a deeper dive on USF and its future challenges during a future episode of the podcast, along with some of these other topics that we talked about today. Too much to get into here in a simple recap as I count down the hours before I get on a plane and head back to Iowa, where I hope it'll cool off after having been in the 90s with a heat index of 100 plus there, and already experienced that here in Nashville all week. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this talking head version of Broadband Action. We love to do interviews. I love to have John on, and that's our usual preferred method, but I thought it was important to kind of give you some perspective on what we learned here at Fiber Connect 2024 in Nashville. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another topic. Until then, thank you everybody for watching and listening. Again, subscribe to Broadband Action, whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast program or you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe so you stay in the loop whenever a new podcast posts. And until next time, thanks for watching or listening to Broadband Action.